Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, University, Madurai, Chennai. Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, University, Madurai, Chennai.
A warm and pleasant good morning, everyone. I feel it's sensible to start with Mahatma Gandhiji's thought on English language, which is so apt to the national webinar we have all gathered to witness today. The saying goes, the English language is so elastic that you can find another word to say the same thing. Such is the essence of English language. Having said this, it gives immense pleasure for us, the Department of English, Adayalampattu Phase II Campus of Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, University, Chennai, Tamil Nadu, in meeting you all today for the national level webinar on origin and development of the English language down the centuries by distinguished Dr.R. Venkataraman, Professor and HOD, Department of English, Vels University, Chennai. I am Professor Dr. P. Harshini, and I'm happy to take up this wonderful task of hosting today's program. The idea behind organizing this webinar is to enrich the knowledge of everyone as regards the origin, growth, and development of English language flowing through the centuries and what exciting progress the language has made till date. We sincerely hope all the enthusiastic participants connected here will have so much to learn from the experienced and intellectual resource person of today, Dr. R. Venkataraman. In the virtual studio, we also have Deputy Dean Academics Dr. A.R. Arunachalam, Head in charge of the Department of English, Mrs. A. Zuli Elizabeth, and Assistant Professors Ms. R. Akshya and Mrs. S. Jaimada from the Department of English. Dear participants connected from all over the nation, I am glad that you all have registered in large numbers to attend this program. Your cooperation and support is what is leading us forward. Your enthusiastic participation motivates us to organize many such useful programs like this. Here I have some info for all of you. There will be a feedback link which will be posted in the YouTube description box at the end of this session. You are all requested to click on, fill, and submit the form before 6 p.m. today to instantly receive your certificate in your registered emails. The feedback link will be deactivated after 6 p.m. In case of any questions as regards to the topic which you would like to know from the resource person of today, kindly utilize the chat box so that at the end of the session we can clear it from him. Since welcoming the gathering is a crucial part before the onset of any program, here comes Mrs. A. Zuli Elizabeth, Head in charge of the Department of English, who is equally excited and eagerly waiting to welcome the enthusiastic gathering. To you now, Julie ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Harshini. The beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you. A warm good morning to all the dignitaries, participants, and research scholars who are connected here. I, Mrs. A. Julia Elizabeth, Associate Professor and Head in Charge, Department of English, feel extremely happy and privileged to welcome you all for a national level webinar on origin and development of English language down the centuries. I express my gratitude to our beloved founder chancellor, through A.C. Shanmugam, and our Honorable President, Engineer A.C.S. Arun Kumar, for encouraging us to conduct useful programs to extend our knowledge in this pandemic time. I am very happy to welcome Dr. S. Geeta Lakshmi, our beloved Vice Chancellor of our esteemed university. She always inspires and motivates all of us at the university to update their knowledge in various fields. I welcome our respected registrar, Dr. C.V. Palnivelu, a kind hearted person who is a great force in conducting programs and events of this kind. I am very much delighted to welcome our Joint Registrar Phase 2, Dr. S. Ramalingam, Dean Dr. S. Manivannan, Phase 2 Campus, who has been guiding and motivating us in organizing a number of events to enhance the knowledge of teaching community. I welcome you, sir. I also welcome our dynamic and energetic Deputy Deans, Academic Dr. A.R. Arunachalam and Professor K. Sindhil Kumar, Administration Phase 2, for their valuable suggestions and encouragements towards the program. I am delighted to welcome the distinguished speaker of the day, Dr.R.Venkataraman, Professor and Head in Department of English, Vels University, Chennai. In spite of his busy schedule, accepted our invitation to share his wide extensive knowledge on origin and development of the English language down the centuries. I welcome you, sir. It's my pleasure to welcome the English department faculty, both teaching and non teaching, for this occasion. I am overjoyed to welcome my beloved participants, research scholars, students from various places to gain knowledge through this session. And I appreciate your presence and interest shown towards this webinar at this difficult time. I hope this webinar will be an eye opener to all the participants all over the nation. I am indebted to welcome all the heads of various departments and all the teaching and non teaching faculty for their valuable presence for this national webinar. Finally, I would like to welcome my department colleagues, come organizers, who were tirelessly working to execute this program. This webinar is to make participants understand the origin, growth, and development of the English language down the centuries and also make them aware of the progress of the language till date. I hope you have an engaging and enriching sessions ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your warm welcome to the gathering. Dear participants, I just received an information that the feedback link will be open only up to 2 p.m. today and it will be available in the YouTube chat box. So please don't forget, it is not up to 6 p.m., it is up to 2 p.m. because it is morning program. Okay, please note down. Okay, now I now invite our young and ever vibrant Deputy Dean Academics Phase 2, Dr. A.R. Arunachalam, to deliver the felicitation address. To you now, sir.
Ma'am, for a kind request, due to some technical issue, sir have left the studio. Can we go for the next profile reading? Thank you.
Okay, okay. It's now time to introduce erudite Dr. R. Venkataraman, our resource person, and we have Mrs. S. J. Mother, who will take up this lovely task of introducing him to us. To you now, Jaya, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. It's indeed a beautiful morning, all soaked in the delighted frame of mind. I am glad to introduce our eminent chief guest, Professor Dr. Venkataraman. He currently works as a professor and HOD English in SCSB University Kanchipuram and Wales University Chennai. He was saved as a professor at Annamalai University. He has published many more books. The titles of the books are A History of English Language and edited with a critical introduction of three novels, Joseph Andrew, Tom's Jones, and Sons and Lovers, Panorama publication at New Delhi. And next, he has translated English to English translation of Lasa Ramamridam Start Story Panorama and published in Telugu in the Sakitya Academy Journal. And he has two published English translator of Patinapalli, and his area of interest is comparative literature and translation. He has recently published his paper Humans and Dalits, accepted for Genoons, an international journal. He has prepared as a study material for PG English through the distance education at Annamalai University. Today, we are very privileged to have an opportunity to listen to him in this beautiful morning. On behalf of all gathered here, I welcome you, sir, to this literal morning for the national level webinar. I welcome you, sir, for once again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was quite an impressive profile. We are thankful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation instantly and gracing the program today as our resource person. We are absolutely certain that your talk will open new vistas of knowledge and be an extraordinary one enriched with your amazing experience that you have put up all through the years. I now warmly invite you to the studio to enlighten the audience. To you now, sir.
Good morning to everyone. At the outset, I thank the authorities of the MGR University for their kind invitation and approbation for my talk. I thank the staff of the English department of MGR University for their kindness, for their friendliness, and the smiling faces with which they have introduced me to the audience. So let us pass on into the subject. Let me begin with a remark made by J.B. Priestley several years ago. There is one thing more foolish than going to hear a lecture, and that, of course, is giving a lecture. When you go to hear a lecture, you expect something novelistic, something strange, something unknown to come from the talker. And when the talker doesn't provide you with the expected information, then what happens is the talker becomes foolish. And on this count, I think what J.B. Priestley had said holds true even to this day. You come here with the expectation of knowing something, and I come here to provide you with some kind of information which I hope would be quite interesting and quite new to you. Let me start with the subject. England was not England before being England. It was a coarse country with geographical richness, and the original inhabitants of that land, which is precisely now known as England and which is commonly known as Britain, was nameless. How is it that a land could be nameless? That is the question that might lurk in the mind of everyone. That a country doesn't have any name, or we do not have any evidence of that name, is the reality. It all belongs to the prehistoric period. So, from whatever evidence that is available in history, we learn that the original people of the land, which latterly came to be known as Britain, were the Beaker people, bearing no resemblance to the people of Britain today. So they were coats, animal-like, with long hands and short legs. And what language did they speak? We do not know. History bears no evidence. Everything belongs to prehistory. And then laterly, around the 5th century BC, so there was an influx of altogether a different population into that land, which laterly became Britain. And then the people who migrated into this land happened to be Iberians, now known as Spain. Iberia, now known as Spain. Iberians. And then people from Gaul, the Gallic part, that is presently known as France. They also braved into that land. Of course, survival was one of the problems. And then seeking new pastures was another aim of these two communities who bore some kind of resemblances. So the Iberians barged into this land and were known as Celts, 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 also pronounced as Celts. They used a stone instrument called Celt, which they used for everything, multi-purpose instrument, and on the basis of that they were known as Celts. And then these people who migrated from Gaul and barged into that land bearing resemblance to the Celts also were Celts because they were also using the same instrument for various purposes in life. So both the communities merged because of the commonality between them. They did not have any kind of animosity between them, and the communities merged and became one. And the Iberian Celtic community happened to call themselves Britons. Why did they call themselves Britons? We do not know, because nouns do not have any kind of logicality in language. Language is purely arbitrary. So language pundits decide upon something, and then it is passed down to generations, and the generations learn it and copy it and transmit it further. And as a result, say the language comes to us without any change and all that. So Brittonic Celts conjointly occupied the land, driving away the Beaker people. And where did the Beaker people go and disappear? We do not know. History bears no evidence at all. So Brittonic Celts occupied the land, and they were valiant people, very, very brave, and they could counter any kind of challenge in life. And the land became the property of the Brittonic Celtic community. They called themselves Britons, sometimes they called themselves Celts, and jointly they called themselves Brittonic Celts. So the land became the property of the Britons, and it underwent a spelling change and then sound change, mutation, in fact, linguistically labeled. And then Briton underwent a change in the sound system and came to be known as Briton and then Britain as it prevails today. This is how Britain came into being. And then these people were just ruling the country, not ruling the country exactly, living in the country. The country was their property. And then now they were free, and then they were bold, they were valiant, and all that. They were well versed in agriculture and warfare also, daring. The kind of daring was very much present in them. And it went on until 440 or thereabouts, 440 AD. And at this time, there arose in the minds of some tribes of Germany the desire to grab this land, because the land happened to be and continues to be geographically attractive, geographically very, very embellished and enriched. And these people from Germany, various tribes lived in Germany. Of these, three tribes assume importance because so they are the history makers, or they happen to be the history makers. One were the Angles. The tribe was known as the Angles. Angles people, they were Angles people, Angles tribe. And another was the Saxon tribe, and still another was the Jutic tribe. These three tribes were speaking dialects mutually intelligible to one another. And dialects in the sense not a developed language. A language is called a language only when it is developed in phonology, grammar, vocabulary, and literature. But they were all speaking dialects which descended from primitive Germanic, an Indo-European linguistic entity. So these people, one by one, they started barging into Britain. And then the Angles were the first to move first. They entered into Britain and occupied the entire eastern area of Britain. The next were the Saxons. They came into Britain and occupied the western part, southwestern part, to be very specific. And the last to move were the Jutes. The Jutes settled in the southern part of Britain, and each tribe of people established a kingdom for themselves. The East Anglian kingdom was established by the Angles tribe. The West Saxon kingdom was established by the Saxons, and region of Kent or the state of Kent was occupied by the Jutes. So the occupation was made complete, and these people from Germany did not dare to counter the already settled population of the Brittonic Celts, because they knew that the Celts were very, very well versed in warfare and might go to any extent of wrecking any kind of effort on their part. Therefore, these people minded their business, established their kingdoms, and went about living socially. And their language was, as has already been mentioned, mutually intelligible. But it was not static. The dialect, Angles dialect was spoken in a different fashion in the East Anglian Kingdom, and Saxony was spoken in a different fashion in the West Saxon Kingdom, and Jutic was spoken altogether in a different way. But people of these tribes were able to understand one another very, very easily because of the commonality of vocabulary and all that. And then time went on. It was when this had happened, it was 450 AD or so, and time was passing, and there arose a kind of administrative compulsion on the part of these people who migrated from Germany. So the problem was who to rule the entirety of the land occupied by them. The Angles were very, very strong, militarily strong, knowledge-wise strong, physically strong, and strong in their mind also, and numerically strong also. So one day there ensued a meeting of the kings or the chieftains of these tribes, and the Saxons attended that meeting, the Angles headed the meeting, and the Jutes attended the meeting. And during that meeting, it was imposedly said that there should be only one name for the country that was occupied by the tribes of Germany. There should be only one name for the language occupied, and there should be only one name for the tribes, in spite of the variance of these tribes into three divisions, namely Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. Since the Angles tribe was very, very large numerically, strong and mighty from the point of view of fighting strength, the Jutes and the West Saxons abided by what was dictated by the Anglican kingdom, by the chieftain of the Anglican kingdom, of the Anglican region. And then it was accepted. The Angles decidedly said, authoritatively said, forcefully said, hereafter our land, that is Britain, our land would be known as Angles land. And then our tribes will be conjointly known as the Angles tribe. And our language, even though they vary in dialectical pattern, will be commonly known as the Angles language. So it was immediately accepted. So as years went by, the word Angles, signifying the Angles tribe, became the common name for the tribe, for the land, and also for the language they were all, or the dialect they were all speaking. So in the long run, the word Angles underwent a process of mutation, sound change, and eventually spelling change also laterly. And then the land became Angles land, and as a result of mutation, it became Engels land, and then Anglo land, and then England. This is how England came about. And then the tribe was known as the Angles tribe, which included the Saxons and the Jutes also. So the people came to be known as the Angles people, or the Angles tribe, Angles tribe, Anglo tribe, and then English tribe. This is how the tribe got its name, English, to their identity, and then their language, Angles language, containing the three dialects of Germany, that is Angles dialect, Saxony, and Jutic. So these three dialects were known as the Angles dialect in a single term. So Angles dialect became Engels dialect, and then Anglar dialect, and then English dialect. This is how the term English came to stick on to the people who migrated from Germany and made the country their own. So this is how England came about. This is how England was born. And then at the initial stages, the dialects did not possess any kind of phonology. Phonology is the art of speaking, or the method of speaking a language in a particular fashion in order to make some kind of impact on the hearer. That is what phonology does in language, in any language. There was no phonology. In the East Anglian Kingdom, the Angles spoke the language in a different way. In the meanwhile, I should also lay emphasis on the fact that the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes mingled with one another by means of matrimony. And as a result, one dialect passed on into the dialect of the other, and all that. And as a result, there was a total amalgamation of the Anglo-Saxon Jutic dialects. And it was, even though, despite being a mixture, the dialect was spoken differently in the East Anglian Kingdom, the West Saxon Kingdom, and the Jutic Kingdom. And there was no phonology at all, no fixity, nobody to give any kind of direction to speak the language in the way in which it should be spoken, because speaking in such a kind of fashion was quite unknown to them. And then there was no grammar at all in the dialect. Dialect doesn't have any grammar, cannot have any grammar, because a dialect cannot be reproduced in printing. So it can exist only at the spoken level. There was no grammatical system at all. For example, a woman was classified. There were two kinds of women there. One was Wiefman and another was Wiefe. Wiefe is today's wife. Wiefman is today's woman. A woman was significantly classified as a spinster. An unmarried woman was called Wiefman. A married woman was called Wiefe. A Wiefe was neuter gender, and then Wiefman, unmarried woman, was masculine. Why, we do not know. Perhaps because of the virility that they were enjoying without being bound by their husbands and all that. So this is how it all goes. Grammar did not have any kind of a fixity. There was no codified grammatical system. There were so many inflections. In modern English, we find that nouns are not at all inflected except in the possessive case. But during the Old English times, even in speech, inflections were too many. Why was this kind of inflection prevalent in their speech? We do not know. So for singular, the noun inflected in a particular way. For plural form, the noun inflected in a particular way. So like that. And then for the first person singular, it was in one fashion. For second person singular, it was in one fashion. Third person singular, it was in one fashion. Like that. For example, take this word, Old English word mear, Nearh, mear. Mear means modern horse. So horse has got only two forms today. That is, as a subject, it is called horse. As an indirect object, it is called horse. And as an object, it is hearts. And when it comes to the possessive case, it is hearts apostrophe s, horses. That's all. But in the Old English days, it was mear, meare, mear, mear, meare, meares, mearum. So like that. So it was confusing to the people, but in spite of that, they carried on. In the same way, stone, modern stone. Stone was known as a stan. Stan, stane, stanus, stanum. So like that it used to go. Even personal pronouns had a different variations. We say I, we, me, you, he, she, it, and all that. There used to be a rhyming poetic pattern that existed in the prevalence of pronouns. Ik, mek, me, min, tu, te, tin. So like that it goes. So let us not go deep into that because it will confuse. And then it was going on, life was going on with this kind of complexity. There was not enough vocabulary. What oft was thought but never so well expressed was the predicament of the people. Emotions were there for the Anglo-Saxons, Jutics. Emotions were there, but they could not express them with such a kind of vehemence with which in modern English we are able to express. So they found it very difficult because the vocabulary was very, very dismal. Less than 3,000 words were there in Anglo-Saxon that occupied their social life. As a result, emotions could not be communicated efficiently. But in spite of that, the dialectal pattern went on. And then there was no literature at all because there was no model, nobody to teach them how to write literature. And poetry was unknown to them, prose was unknown to them, and then drama was unknown to them, even though it's a fact that their life itself was dramatic. And then another interesting feature that we come upon is that the Old English language, technically called the Anglo-Saxon, did not possess any orthographical pattern. That is, the letters were not at all there. They did not know how to write their own letters, their own language. Whatever was conveyed was by means of diagrams, by means of figures, pictures, on tablets, on rocks, on sand surfaces, and all that. So this was what was going on. The writing pattern was like this among the Old English people or the Anglo-Saxons. So the letters were absent, alphabets were absent, no orthography was there, no phonology was there, illogical grammatical system. For example, door, duru. Duru was the original name of door. Duru was classified under masculine gender. Perhaps it was a very steadfast, very strong, very firm, and all that we do not know. We do not know the logicality or reasonableness of such a kind of prevalence of linguistic variance. And then vocabulary was very, very dismal, and then literature was not at all present because they did not know how to write literature and all that. When the situation was like this, there was a Roman invasion into England. It happened in the year 597 AD, and it was headed by Saint Augustine under instructions from the then Pope of Rome. The then Pope of Rome, I do not remember exactly the name of the Pope, perhaps Pope Gregory, I think, if my memory is right. Pope Gregory sent one of his cardinals, Saint Augustine, to England with three purposes. One was to spread the tenets of Christianity in England. The Anglo-Saxons were pagans. They did not know any religion. The elements of nature were worshipped by them. Fire worship was there, and then they were very much wordsworthy in their dispensation towards godliness or natural elements and all. So there was the Roman desire to spread the tenets of Christianity in England, and then Pope wanted to install the Latin language and then to teach the pagan Anglo-Saxon population the Roman ways of life. So socializing and then Christianizing and then Latinizing. These were the three purposes. So the invasion, it was not a military invasion. In fact, it was a kind of a civil invasion. So under the headship of Saint Augustine. Saint Augustine came there with his scholars, with military personnel also to render them some help, and then entered into England. And there was no scuffle. There was no quarrel, no skirmish on any count. It was a friendly accommodation for the Romans. And Christianity was introduced. And then um, the social habits of the Romans were also introduced to the Anglo-Saxons. And when Saint Augustine wanted to uh, teach Latin to the Anglo-Saxons, he was flummoxed, puzzled. He did not know how to do that because the Anglo-Saxons did not know Latin, and Saint Augustine and his followers did not know Anglo-Saxon. Moreover, they could not know Anglo-Saxon because of the absence of the alphabets in the language. So he consulted, St. Augustine consulted his masters, literary masters, and then all of them decided that the Latin alphabetical system should be modified and introduced as the Anglo-Saxon alphabetical system, and thus the English alphabetical system was introduced in England. So when the English alphabetical system was introduced in England, it was in for the Anglo-Saxons, and the system was alphabetical system was the Latin alphabetical system modified. And one interesting feature or characteristic of Latin is that it doesn't have the letters K and Q. K and Q are not at all there, even though the sounds were very much present in speech. So, whichever language you take into consideration, sounds, you see, they prevail. For example, in Tamil, Ra sound is there, Param, Varai Param, we say. But that sound is not present in Sanskrit, in English, and all that. The sound is not present in the orthographical form. So, that is the truth. So, the sound is present, but the sound cannot be represented in the orthographic form. So, that is the reality. So, when languages do not possess orthographic forms for the sound, for certain sounds, it means that the linguisticians, the linguistic scholars are responsible for it because they are the dictators. They are arbitrary in their decisions and all that. A sound which is possible to come out of the mouth of a particular person, of a particular individual, cannot be represented in a language, means that language is weak. That kind of weakness was there in Latin also. And the sound produced by the letter K and also the sound produced by the letter Q were performed in Latin by the letter C. So C offered to give the sound of ik, and then ku sound represented by Q, and ku sound represented by K. These two sounds were performed by the letter C in Latin, and that's why in Old English we get kin for Kin, kin. King, kinning, cyning is known for king, kinning. And then quen, CWE, and quen means queen. So like that. So in Old English, you find K and Q functions majorly performed by the letter C. And moreover, the Latin masters also introduced two additional letters to the alphabetical system of the Anglo-Saxon language, Anglo-Saxon dialect. That is, one is it. It is written in modern English by conjoining two letters T and H. Id sound is written with a conjunction of D and H today in modern English. But the Latin masters represented these sounds by single letters. That is, TH, it sound was represented in Latin by a letter which looks like P, but with its tail inclined towards our left. That is, if you write P, then draw a wall or draw a tail towards your left. and then it becomes it. And then id means it is written very much like D with its tail upward going and then with a cross across it. So these two letters were introduced additionally by the Latin masters to represent ith sound and id sound. So these were the intricacies. And then the problem came up. So how to make these people understand what is there in Latin? Latin was not much developed in literature. In literature, um, at that time. That is, Latin was already rich, but most of its literatures were in the form of biblical scriptures translated into Latin from Hebrew, and then Aramaic, and then Armenian, Albanian, and other languages that prevailed in the Indo-European regions. So the Bible was, the biblical scriptures were written in so many languages, which were initially translated into Latin and also Greek, and eventually they passed into England, resulting in the birth of the Bishop's Bible, followed eventually by the authorized version of the Bible in the year 1611. And then, so literature was quite unknown to the Anglo-Saxons. And when Saint Augustine ordered his literary masters, they were able to translate the Latin scriptural matter into Anglo-Saxon with the help of the Anglo-Saxon letters. And then Anglo-Saxon vocabulary started passing into Latin also, and it was vice versa also. So Latin words started entering into Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon words were learned by the Latin masters in order to present the Latin equivalents from Latin into Anglo-Saxon. That was the purpose for which they learned Anglo-Saxon. So they talked to the Anglo-Saxon people and got to know the various names for various features, environment, animals, and all that, and then introduced and then understood and then introduced the equivalents in Latin into this language. And then during this process, literature was slowly developing because the Latin people were providing them with models. So religious literature was the first kind of literature that passed into Anglo-Saxon, and it was mostly Christian in content, and as a result, Latinization of Anglo-Saxon was also taking place simultaneously. Christianization of the pagans, pagan community of the Anglo-Saxons was also taking place. Not to forget about the social customs that had already penetrated into the fabric of the Anglo-Saxon life. And during this time, there was a very significant linguistic happening took place, that had taken place. That is the so-called mutation, e-mutation. So most of you or some of you would have read this chapter during your BA or MA English studies, or most of you would have even left it conveniently under choice because it is very difficult, a kind of thing, a technical thing. In order to understand that a technical thing, you have to know a little bit of Old English also. And this is called e-mutation. Some call it I-mutation also, and I do not know the veracity of it. But when we studied Old English as a language during our MA, our teacher used to teach it as e-mutation. And this mutation, when you read Frederick T. Wood's history of the English an outline history of the English language, you come across this topic. And when you develop any doubt and want to clarify it, F.T. Wood safely goes away, because what is doubtful to us also is doubtful to F.T. Wood. He gives only an elementary idea of what e-mutation is. So that is, Old English had words passed into it from other tribes, also from Germany, who happened to visit England in order to see their relatives among the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes. So during that process of other Germanic tribes coming into England to meet the Anglo-Saxon Jutic communities, words from primitive Germanic, words from Old High German, and words from Gothic entered into the Old English language. However, there was some difficulty for the Anglo-Saxons to pronounce those words with that kind of exactitude with which the primitive Germanic people, the old Germanic people, and the Gothic communities pronounced them or spoke them. So there was some difficulty. That is, in the borrowed words, the first syllable possessed usually a back vowel, and this back vowel was fronted by the influence of the E sound standing in the second syllable. For example, I tell you a word, do tree. It's an Anglo-Saxon word. Do tree. Do tree. It's not exactly an Anglo-Saxon word. It's a primitive Germanic word. Do tree. So somehow or other, the Old English people could not pronounce it properly. Dotri, it did not come to them, to their tongue, very much like our Tamil people who say Valapalam. அப்படிங்கிறான் எவ்வளோ சொன்னாலும் அந்த இது வரவே வராது தமிழ் வாழ்க. ஸோ லைக் தட் இட்ஸ் அ கைண்ட் ஆஃப் மியூட்டேஷன் பிகாஸ் இட் இஸ் அவனுக்கு அப்படி சொன்னாதான் வரும் வாயில், இல்லைன்னா வராது. So that is the thing. So that's that kind of defect suffered the Anglo-Saxon people. So the back vowel could not be pronounced with exactitude like the contributor or the contributing languages, contributing dialects. So for example, you take this do tree. It's a primitive Germanic word. Do tree, 2 syllables. D-O-H, 1 syllable. The first syllable, the second syllable is tree. T-R-I, tree. So the E sound is there in the second syllable. The E sound somehow or other disturbed the Anglo-Saxon speakers and they could not pronounce the back vowel properly. Do tree, do tree. So they tended to front it. So do tree underwent a morphological change. Do tree. And when it underwent a morphological change, by being sounded differently, it became deter. D-E-H-T-E-R, deter. Do-tree became deter. So the E sound standing in the second syllable of the borrowed word affected the pronunciation of the back vowel standing in the first syllable, and hence there was a total destruction of the structure of the word itself, and do-tree became, by way of E mutation, deter, which is today daughter. So is the case with another word, bunkids, B-A-N-K-I-Z, bunkids. Yeah, old High German word, bunkids, bun, kids. The E sound standing in the second syllable affected the A sound standing in the first syllable, and then it was converted. The structure was altered and it became benk, B-E-N-C. You note the sound of the letter C. I already told you K was not there, Q was not there in Latin, and the performance of these two sounds were done by the letter C, and ultimately in Old English it became benk, and today it is known as bench. So like that. So E mutation, by way of introducing so many words into Anglo-Saxon, contributed to the embellishment of vocabulary of Anglo-Saxon, and thus the dismal state of vocabulary of Anglo-Saxon was got over. And another habit of the Old English people was to pronounce every letter, to give a democratic treatment to every letter that appeared in a word, that appeared in a sentence. By then, Latin had already been introduced, and then literature was born, and the Old English people started to learn through Latin their own language, including the alphabetical system. So when you hear Old English being spoken, some records are there in Annamalai University, some Old English renderings and all that, given by ancient professors, not English professors from England. So that they are still retained there in the library, in the department library. And when you hear them, you feel that the words are put into a huller machine, and then they are ground to fine powder and all that. Adare, Sade, Lavfode, Alfrede, Kininge, that hey, Alra, Natmona, Natmost, Bude. அப்படின்னா யாருக்கும் ஒன்றுமே புரியாது. எழுதும்போது alphabets will be the same as it is there in modern English. But when you speak it, what happens? You do not know. You cannot make out any meaning out of this pronunciation of words. Nushulan, Herigian, Hiofandricus, Viad, Miotodas, Miote, on his Mount Getang. Bior Uldor Father, Swahe Undragavas, Ike Dicton or Onstialde means it's a prayer song in Old English. When you say it, you feel that some alien language is passing into your ears. So, but when you write it down, then you have a feeling that you are able to make out some meaning because of the resemblance some words do possess to modern English. So this is the kind of strangeness that we find in Old English. Phonology less, grammar less, and then vocabulary less and literature less, slowly emerging into a socio-linguistic entity because of the efforts taken by the Latin masters. And this language came into the written form and was popularized by King Alfred the Great, who ruled the country, who ruled the West Saxon kingdom during the later half of the 9th century and the 10th century early part. So he encouraged written literature because he thought that his kingdom would prevail, and then he would at one time become the king of England to the entire England and all that. And therefore he encouraged the propagation of this language. And then initially the literature that was written in the Anglo-Saxon language happened to be travel literature. So people started, Anglo-Saxon scholars, not in the sense of a scholar in the prevalent times of today. So scholar means learned some Latin, learned some Anglo-Saxon. He was able to read, write, and all that. So Anglo-Saxon scholars in that sense were encouraged to write their experiences, social experiences, religious experiences, travel experiences, and all that. And then they were published. They were published in the form of, say, leaves, and by King Alfred the Great. And then this kind of proceeding was going on. And King Alfred the Great also died all on a sudden. And then his son took over the reins. And then his son, his grandson also took over the reins. And he was known as Edward the Confessor. And then Edward died without any issue. And by that time, there was a kind of connection that was established between the northern part of France and England. And here we should remember that the Scandinavian region also contributed profusely to the embellishment of the English language. So when things were going on like this during the late 8th century AD, there was an intrusion from the Danes in Scandinavia into the central portion of England. And the Danes were capable of robbing even the robbers. So they were sea pirates without any kind of pangs of conscience. They were conscienceless. So they were brutal. They were very mighty, far mightier, far stronger than even the Anglo-Saxons and all that. So they barged into the middle portion of Britain and started ruling that land with their own laws, and hence the middle portion of that English nation came to be known as the Danelaw region. Danelaw, that is, Danish law was imposed there, they ruled there, and there was no fight between the Danes and the Anglo-Saxon tribe because each knew each other. So this was the condition. And simultaneously, when they came into England, The Danes also went to the northwest frontier of France and established a dukedom there. So, in that dukedom, there were so many dukes who wanted to grab England, hearing of England's richness, geographical richness, and other resources. They wanted to grab England. And several times they invaded England, but were very badly defeated by the successive, say, rulers there, particularly from the West Saxons. And in the year 1066, Duke William of Normandy, from the clan of the Scandinavian Danish tribe, which established itself there in Normandy, there was an emergence. There was the emergence of Duke William, who also wanted to grab England and do a lot of, say, occupational business. And he was also defeated several times, but at last in the year 1066, he gathered a very large army, and then he fed them with enough spiritual speeches and all that. And the army of Duke William was landing in England near Hastings. And at that time, Harold was the king of the West Saxon kingdom. The Anglo-Saxons, the combined Anglo-Saxon army. West Saxon means, I do not variate it as an individual entity of kingdom, but the Anglo-Saxon community as a whole joining hands with the West Saxons, consolidating themselves as one tribe for the one nation, speaking the one language. So they were fighting from hilltops. Senilac happened to be the place wherein from a hilltop the Anglo-Saxon army was fighting, inflicted very, very heavy wounds on the army of Duke William. And then Duke William was spiritually down, bogged down, and then he did not know what to do. But he was very intelligent enough to employ a ploy. So he ordered his army to turn back and march towards the seashore. And they went several miles on the plains towards the seashore. And seeing them going far away from the hills, far away, several miles away from the hills near Senilac, the Anglo-Saxon army got down and then started chasing Duke William's army on the plains. At this time, Duke William ordered his army to turn back and then fight. In the ensuing fight, the Anglo-Saxon army was destroyed, devastated, and then doomed and then damned to disgraceful death. And as a result, Duke William's army entered into England, and Duke William established himself and installed himself as the King of England. And as a result, the Norman French language, which prevailed in Normandy area in the northwestern part of France, started dictating terms in Britain. So Norman French vocabulary started penetrating into Anglo-Saxon. But even in this exercise, there was a limitation, because the Norman French people did not go into the rural areas of Britain, and they remained only in the urban areas, making their impact on schools, on churches, on courts of law, on finance, on business, commerce. So in all these areas, Norman French was introduced as the prime language. Anglo-Saxon began to occupy only the second place. And whenever the rural people of England came into contact with their urban counterparts, they used to come into contact with French words, Norman French words also. The Norman French words thus passed into Anglo-Saxon even in rural areas. And this was going on. Institutions were Frenchified. Courts were Gallicized. Gallicized means a term equivalent to mean the Frenchification process. So you say that so and so is Frenchified, means you can say that so and so is Gallicized, because Gaul happened to be the old name for France, Gaul, and the language that prevailed there was known as Gallic. So like this, it went on. And then the Norman French people noticed a special feature in the speech habit of the Anglo-Saxons. What was it? That is, the Anglo-Saxons were speaking their own language in a very, very crude way. From the way in which the language was spoken, the Norman French people were not able to identify whether it was a strong emotion or a soft emotion. Therefore, the Norman French people taught the Anglo-Saxons to adopt softness in speech, silence in speech. You need not be very vociferous in pronouncing certain words. You have to be very soft. When your emotion is soft, you speak softly. When your emotion is strong, you speak strongly. That was the dictation. That was a kind of instruction, linguistic instruction, that was given by the Norman French people to the Anglo-Saxons. When you love somebody, you cannot say, I like you very much. You cannot say that. The opposite party will run away. And then, if you were an officer in the army and you find your army man or a soldier coming late to office during the times of non-war periods, during the non-war times, you cannot tell him, see, if you come late like this, I will take action against you, means the soldier will never respect his superior. So, right emotion and right word at the right time, that was the dictation given by the Norman French people, and it was the Norman French literary masters who introduced the letters K and Q into the English language. Until then, this was done around 1240 AD. Until 1240 AD, the letters K and Q were not at all there in the English language, in the English alphabetical system. But it is a kind of irony to note that Latin did not have K and Q. But the language, French language, which was born out of Latin, possessed this K and Q. How? We do not know. However, credit goes to the Norman French masters who introduced the K and Q into the English alphabetical system around 1240 or thereabouts. And then they found so many strange features in the language. The use of double T, double M, double N, double T, double D, double P, and all that. So they frowned at all these usages. They wanted to simplify the language. Therefore, they dispensed with the use of double T, double D, double M, double N, double P, and all that. So this had happened as a result of a simplification of the process. And then they introduced some mythological literature into Anglo-Saxon. As a result, this mythological literature was translated into Anglo-Saxon by the Anglo-Saxon masters. This went on for about 300 years. And then there was a kind of rivalry between England and de facto France. De facto France means Parisian French. Parisian French, the French of Paris. That is, Paris as the capital of the country, Central Parisian French country it was called. That is, it got its name from a tribe called the Parisi that occupied the area, and from that name, Parisi, comes the name Paris, modern Paris. So the French Central Parisian Kingdom was there, and the Central Parisian kings, one by one, had the habit of infiltrating into Britain, and there was a constant rivalry between these two nations. And as a result, this Central Parisian Kingdom also won over England and came there, and as a result, there was a great linguistic amalgamation. Old English or Anglo-Saxon itself is hybrid, composed of a primitive Germanic, composed of Anglo-Saxony, Jutic, primitive Germanic, Old High German, Gothic, and then eventually after some time Latin, and then Norman French, and now Central Parisian French vocabulary also started into that getting into that, and as a result, it became an amalgamated language. And all of us know that French is a language which is not spoken vociferously. It is very musical, it is very soft, and all that. And French literature started infiltrating into England, and all. And by that time, everything was coming to a close. It was the close of the 15th century. Close of the 15th century. That is, by that time, Chaucer had emerged, and nobody knew which language would prevail in England. It was an uncertain linguistic atmosphere, whether it would be Anglo-Saxon, represented by West Saxon dialect, or East Midland dialect. And by that time, London was also becoming very hectic in business and all that. And East Midland dialect was considered to be a business language. And nobody knew whether it would be West Saxon that would prevail in England, or East dialect, Eastern dialect, or Northumbrian or Mercian dialect, or Norman French, or Central Parisian French. There was a lot of uncertainty, and in order to tide over it, Chaucer was employing a ploy. He wrote his literature comprising Anglo-Saxon, which laterly became Middle English because of the influence of the French people, the French, both the Norman French and Central Parisian French. So, Anglo-Saxon, whether to use Anglo-Saxon, whether to use Norman French, whether to use Central Parisian French, or the East Midland dialect, or Northumbrian or Mercian dialect, it was a dilemma. It was quite dilemmatic to Chaucer. He did not know what to do. Therefore, representatively, he chose Anglo-Saxon, which was getting refined because of the influence of the French language, and also employed Norman French vocabulary and also Central Parisian vocabulary, because he was not certain about the linguistic state of England in future. And granting that any one of these languages becomes the ruling language of Britain, his literature would survive. That was his hope. So it was with this hope that he wrote his literature. And then slowly Renaissance was passing in, and then still Latin had not lost its dignity. And then uniformity in pronunciation could not be achieved in spite of all these happenings. And then occurred a very eventful, incident, that is the printing press established by Caxton on getting clues from Gutenberg, so who had done that in France already. So from France, the influence of the printing press had passed on to England, and then William Caxton, established or erected his press, and books were printed around the year 1476 by Caxton. And then, so this was going on, and then Ben Jonson, Spencer, and then Sidney, and then poets like Wyatt and Surrey, and then this pre-Shakespearean, pre-University wits drama. Even before the university wits who popularized the drama, there was a drama in the form of liturgical plays, in the form of miracles, and then moralities, and then cycles and all that. So these dramatists, and then Wyatt and Surrey, and then Edmund Spencer, Philip Sidney, all these people started their experiments with the refined language for which Chaucer happened to be the forerunner. So, and even if you read Chaucer or Wyatt and Surrey or Sidney or Spencer, you find spelling variations, so predominantly present in their writings. Even Ben Jonson went to the extent of saying that considering the English that Spencer used, I don't think that he wrote any English at all. That was the cryptic remark given by Ben Jonson. And then came Shakespeare. And then Shakespeare refined the English language and passed a lot of words into the vocabulary and all that, and followed by Milton, and who introduced some words like a pandemonium and all that into the English language. However, Greek and Latin continued to occupy their dignified places in the system of in the socio-linguistic scene. And then by the end of the Renaissance, spelling was standardized because of the efforts taken by scholars. And then Defoe, Daniel Defoe, who is known for his small Flanders, say he took a cognizance of Spencer's use of for the English language, because Spencer used a lot of unknown words, which was quite allergic to Defoe. And then Defoe advocated that there should be exclusive puritanistic English that should be encouraged in England. And then there was also because of the printing press, so many writings were coming up. Philosophical writings were coming up, religious writings, literary writings, and matter life on life and other matters were coming up. But when all these were coming up, people, the readers, felt a difficulty. They did not know the meaning of certain words. There was no dictionary in England, so the presence of some kind of dictionary was felt very strongly in England. And then it was felt during the Renaissance. And then at this point of time, there was a scholar who was a professor of Greek in Oxford University, Richard Mulcaster, so of 1560 or thereabouts. And then he said that there should be pure English language, and we should look into the native resources. Native resources means Anglo-Saxon resources. So it is paradoxical to use this term, native resources, because there is no native resource for the English language, because it's a combination of Anglo-Saxony, Jutic, and then Primitive Germanic, and then Old High German, and then Gothic, and then Latin, and then Norman French, and then Central Parisian French. Apart from that, Greek words also were entering, and because of the Renaissance, Italian words also were entering, Spanish words were entering, Portuguese words were entering. So the Anglo-Saxon became the language. Anglo-Saxon became a repository. It became a head. So giving refuge to so many languages and all that. And then Dryden even went to the extent of calling Anglo-Saxon language, or the English, modernized English language, very, very barbarous. That was his strong opinion. And then learning Greek and Latin was considered to be a matter of snobbery. So writers learned these and tried to use them in their books, and the so-called annotation, which is poorly answered by the people, by the present-day English literature students, happened during that time. Annotation is not these are the words taken from As You Like It, written by John Milton. பசங்க இன்னைக்கு இருக்கிற பசங்களாம் அதான் செய்யறான். ஸோ ஆதர் தெரியாது, அனோட்டேஷன்னா என்ன பண்ணணும்னு தெரியாது. So the so-called annotative process had happened during the Renaissance because of the prevalence, because of the proliferation of Greek, Latin words, Italian words in their writings. So whenever any such word, any such phraseology or any idiom was introduced, it was wont with the English writers to write exclusive notes on such a kind of thing. So annotation means you trace the origin of the word, and then the various meanings pinned to that, and then in what sense it is used here, how is it contributive to the entire process of meaning making. That is what is known as annotation. Not that these are the words taken from Much Ado About Nothing, written by Shakespeare during the 16th century and all that. No, that kind of business is altogether done away with regard to annotations. So the process of annotation had taken place with writers during the fag end of the Renaissance. And then there was during the and then the dictionary. By then English had become a little bit standardized. People were accustomed to English words. There was effort on the part of scholars from Oxford and Cambridge universities to pick out words from the sources of Anglo-Saxon, which were almost left in oblivion by people because of non-use and because of lack of opportunity to use them, because of the infiltration made by by the Central Parisian French and Norman French languages. And then the need for a dictionary was felt very strongly. People did not know the meanings of words. People did not know how to grammatically present sentences and all that. Grammar had not ascertained itself even during the times of Dryden. So this need, and during that time emerged a very great scholar, Samuel Johnson. He was responsible for bringing out the first recognizable dictionary in the English language in the year 1855, wherein he was a very great scholar and also very mischievous in his mind. And for example, he gave this definition for the word votes in his dictionary, published for the first time in 1855. 1850, yes, 1755, I think. I'm not certain. I've forgotten that. I do not know. Yes. And he said, votes. What is votes? For that, he gave this definition. Votes is a grain given to horses in England and taken by human beings in Scotland. That was a period of animosity between the Scottish people and the English people. In order to denounce the Scots, Samuel Johnson made that a mischievous remark in his dictionary. Words, a grain taken by given to horses in England and taken by human beings in Scotland. So he gave the dictionary, and that dictionary provided meanings to so many words, and then it provided some grammatical notes also as to the usage of words in sentences. Thereby, the dictionary contributed to semantic enrichment of the English vocabulary. And then it all proceeded during the succeeding centuries, grabbing the kind of English that was developed grammatically, and then from the point of view of vocabulary, and from the point of view of literature, from the point of view of even phonology. All writers started writing their literature. And with regard to phonology, I should point out that it was Richard Brinsley Sheridan's father who was responsible for introducing this aspect of phonology, because he thought that English should be spoken by the educated people in a different way, because even all street hawkers and then sellers, vagabonds, and all were speaking English, similarly or without any kind of dictation. Therefore, Richard Brinsley Sheridan's father, who was a lawyer, he was also a dramatist. He also wrote some dramas which never became successful. But however, he was very particular about the educated people of England to speak English with certain intricacies, with certain kinds of accents, and thereby his articles in journals, in periodicals, became very popular. And as a result, there was a compulsion, emotional compulsion on the part of the English community to speak, educated English community to speak English by way of specifications propagated by Sheridan's father. And then there was this colonization, and people, because of development in navigation and all that, people started going to America for new pastures and all that, and people seeing the Englishmen coming from riches, they also, people from Spain, Portugal, Italy, and then Scandinavian countries also started going to America and occupied several places, even though the English dominance was very much present there. And at last, when there was some kind of political settlement, English was accommodated as the national language of America, and It was influenced by the French language also. That's why we find a kind of a discrepancy in American English with regard to spelling and also pronunciation. The French softness and then silence entered into the American language, American English, which was British English. When the British people went to America, they took with them the English of the Bible, the English of Shakespeare, and the English of Milton. But ironically, these Englishes were not at all fit enough to describe the vast frontier of America. Therefore, Red Indian dialects were sought for rightful words and all that. Apart from that, French, Scandinavian entry into America also contributed to the embellishment of the British English, which laterly became American English. And as a result of the influence of the French languages, French language, de facto French language, silence and spelling variants also came to occupy a very dominant place in American English. And today it occupies a very covetous place in the socio-linguistic scene. And consequent on the development of science and technology, so many words have crept into the English language, and even some of the conventional words do possess some different meanings today because of computerization, because of science and technology, their advancement and all that. So when I was a student, the meaning that I had for the word default was something. Today, default has become changed in its meaning. So words undergo meaning change according to the whims and fancies of people. For example, once upon a time, an undertaker was anybody who undertook any job. She is an undertaker of teaching. He is an undertaker of banking. He is an undertaking of winery and all that. But today, an undertaker means one who arranges for the funeral. So, like that, words undergo change of meaning. During Jane Austen's days, the word nice was very contemptuous. If you say, if you address a lady and then you say you are very nice, means your face would be bounced, because nice meant foolishness. But today, nice means it has become an evasive word. So, if when you are short of vocabulary to describe a particular thing, you can very well go out of the situation, out of the context by saying, "Oh, it is nice," and all that. Nice has become so elastic, so plastic, and then it is elongated, it is flexed, it is twisted, distorted, and then used in any way like that. Words go about changing their meanings according to the whims and fancies of people, and and you have got variances like Indian English, you have got Caribbean English, Singaporean English, Asian English, Sri Lankan English, Pakistani English, Bangladeshi English, and then Australian English, New Zealand English, American English, English, and all that. So this is the situation in which English stands today, and I think that I should take leave of it because I have exceeded the time that has been given to me, because so many facts are there packed, and unless they are imparted in person-to-person communication, I don't think it is possible to disseminate any such information in a meeting like this. With this, I end up my speech. Thank you for your hearing.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an intriguing and wonderfully adept webinar. You had so much of information to share with us, and we were really astounded and inspired by the way you carried yourself throughout the program. We could see your rich academic experience and your knowledge of the subject in every sentence that you spoke today. It won't be surprising if anyone calls you the language encyclopedia. Thanks once again, sir. Our ever energetic Deputy Dean Academics, Dr. A.R. Arunachalam, has now joined, and we request him to come to the studio to give the felicitation address. To you now, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So I think very good afternoon to one and all connected here. So sorry, due to some important work, I couldn't join at the start of the session. But anyways, I wanted to make my presence during this national level webinar, which is successfully completed now. So really, I mean, on behalf of Dr. MGR Educational Research Institute, I once again welcome Adayalampattu Phase II Campus. I really welcome all the participants, especially for attending this wonderful webinar, which has been conducted by Department of English on a very important topic, that is origin and development of English language down the centuries. I think this topic is really very, very important at this moment of time. So really, I really appreciate the department, HOD in charge, Mrs. Julie Elizabeth ma'am, along with other faculty members, Dr. P. Harshini ma'am, and then Akshaya ma'am, as well as Jayamada ma'am, who have been doing a wonderful team effort. I think they have done a splendid job in successfully organizing this national level webinar. And I really thank the speaker of today's session. I mean, we had an eminent person, Dr.R. Venkataraman, professor and HOD at Department of English, Wales University. Thank you so much, sir. I think it was a splendid session. I think there are a lot of participants already were watching this program live, and there were a lot of positive feedbacks I could see. So I think it was an enlightening session. So thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. So on behalf of Dr. MGR Educational Research Institute, I really thank you for accepting our invitation, for spending your valuable time with us today and sharing your knowledge, your expertise and other things. So I really appreciate the department for the successful completion of this webinar, and I also thank the department for inviting me to take part in this particular webinar. So thank you all. I hope the session was really good. So please stay connected for the next session. I mean, thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your beautiful and motivating address. It is now time for question and answer session, and I request Mrs. S. Jayamada to take up this part. To you now, Jaya ma'am.
Sir, with your kind permission, we will move to the question and answer session.
Okay.
The first question our participants is asking: the trend of speaking Hindi and English is increasing in India. According to you, is it correct? And how has it affected the English language?
The English language is not at all affected. It is the people who do that, they are affected. That's why they do that. That is, they mix this because of shortage of vocabulary. Certain things contextually become effective only when you reveal it in your native language. For example, one is walking and then he falls down and then sustains an injury. How can you describe it? He was walking haphazardly and tripped and then sustained an injury. When you tell it in Tamil, எசகு பிசகா கீழே விழுந்தான்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, கால் ஒடிஞ்சு போச்சு. அந்த எசகு பிசகுங்கிறத இங்கிலீஷில் சொல்ல முடியாது, untranslatable. So they resorted to this kind of expression. However, it cannot be avoided because it requires a high level of education to speak exclusively in English, and people are not language conscious in our country particularly. So I don't think this is wrong. It all depends. Highly educated people do not talk like this. People who are moderately educated, less educated, or uneducated do resort to this kind of practice of mingling their mother tongue with English. Once in a way, you can introduce your mother tongue or any other language as intrusive for the sake of humor and all that. But consistently doing that, it tells upon one's academic background. Then.
Okay. Thank you, sir. The second question is, do you think religion plays a major role in the development of English language?
This is applicable to England in the form of the Bible. In fact, the Bible contributed to the development of the English language very, very significantly, because you get opportunities to come across words from Hebrew and then Aramaic, the mother tongue of Jesus Christ, and then Armenian, and then Albanian, and so many other languages which have disappeared today from the socio-linguistic scene. So religion plays a major role in the development of English language. Means we can give recognition only to the Bible. So Wycliffe's Bible, Coverdale's Bible, Tyndale's Bible all contributed to the consolidation of Bishop's Bible. And then eventually it resulted in James the First asking his literary masters to consolidate the Bible in the form of the authorized version, and thereby the Christian religion played a very major part in the development of the English language. We have got, when you read the Psalms, you come across so many expressions, metaphorical expressions, metonymic expressions, and then other such expressions flourishing with a literary flavor and all that. But now that English has become the language of the world, anybody from any religion can impart the teachings in the English language, and thereby sensibility, the local sensibility is passed on to the other communities by means of the English language, and different concepts, different terminologies, different ideas, different ideations, all get an opportunity to go to other countries, and as a result, the English language is contributive to the embellishment of communicative facility of people by means of religion also.
Thank you, sir. The third question is, in North India, the English language is considered as a scale of measurement of language. To what extent do you think it is appropriate for development of society?
In North India, you get two paradoxical situations. The way in which common people pronounce English words. What are you doing? I am doing MA privilege. First year nu solla maatam. Privilege nu solluvom. Previous appadina first year nu artham. I am doing privilege. First year privilege. What discipline do you study in your BSc? Geology, so like that. The pronunciation is awful among the common people. But with regard to the educated community, they think certainly what you say or what Harshini has asked is right. The English language is considered a scale of measurement of knowledge. When you go to North India, you can feel it when you talk to people. So the first question matter, that is speaking in English and Hindi, becomes very much rampant in North India, even among the educated communities. But so this kind of tendency to think like this, that English language is considered a language scale of measurement, is a measurement of knowledge, is very much prevalent among the North Indians. And then it is appropriate means say when there is globalization, it is appropriate. When you are determined to confine yourself, your life within a certain area, then it is not right. When there is globalization, then this kind of attitude will certainly contribute to the development of society.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And I think we will finish all the questions. And thank you for your valuable answer, sir. Now I invite Dr. P. Harshini ma'am to take over the session.
Thank you, Venkataraman sir and Mrs. Jaymada. Special thanks to our resource person, Dr. Venkataraman, for patiently and efficiently answering all the questions posted by participants. We now have Ms. R. Akshya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, who is all set and fervently waiting with immense gratitude for everyone who helped in the successful conduct of today's webinar. I shall now call her to the studio to propose the vote of thanks. To you now, Akshya ma'am.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, thank you all the participants. It's my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks on this national webinar on origin and development of English language down the centuries. My sincere thanks to our resource person, Dr. R. Venkataraman, in today's program. In spite of his busy schedule, he accepted our invitation and shared his knowledge to our participants. Sir, it was an interactive presentation that gave a deeper insight to the participants on the topic on the origin, growth, and development of English language down the centuries, and also awareness of the progress of the language has made till the date. And I convey my special thanks to Dr. Sandamarai ma'am who helped us selflessly in arranging the resourceful person for our department, due to which we are able to organize and conduct many programs smoothly. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to take this opportunity to express a hearty thanks to our management and the Honorable President, Engineer ACS Arun Kumar sir, for his support and guidance he has extended to all of us in the department. I am extremely thankful to a joint registrar, Dr. S. Ramalingam, respected Dean, Dr. S. Manivannan, Deputy Dean, both academics, Dr. A. R. Arunachalam, and Professor K. Sendil Kumar, administration, for their enormous support and guidance in conducting the various programs. I thank my department colleagues, Mrs. A. Julie Elizabeth, Professor Dr. P. Hashini, and Mrs. S. Jaimata for their coordination and enormous support for making this event a grand success. I also extend my heartfelt thanks to Mr. Ganesh Babu sir, System Admin of CSE Department, for his never-ending technical support. Last but not least, I thank all the participants from all over the world for making this event a resounding success. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Akshaya ma'am. It is now time to witness a spectacular and memorable moment. Our resource person of today, Dr.R. Venkataraman, has done a remarkable job of enlightening the participants from all over the nation with his profound knowledge. It hence becomes a bound privilege and duty on behalf of our esteemed university to appreciate him for his selfless sharing of knowledge to the academic community. I request Ms. R. Akshaya to display the appreciation certificate as a token of our immense gratitude through this virtual studio. So please accept our appreciation certificate, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Akshaya. Now, dear participants, this is again information for you. The feedback link is displayed under the bright yellow title and is now active in the YouTube description box. You are requested to click, fill, and submit the form before 2 p.m. Indian time today to instantly receive your certificate in your registered email. The form will be deactivated after 2 p.m. Ever since the inception of virtual programs, it has been a policy of our university, to avoid sharing the presentation. Like today, the resource person has not shared the presentation. He just gave a beautiful talk. So I'm just giving a common information that the PPT slide won't be shared henceforth. Okay. Then we have now come to the fag end of the program, and we are extremely positive that the academic world would have gained the needed knowledge out of the topic. With weighted gratification of presenting a stately webinar of worldly significance, this webinar link will be always available in the YouTube channel. You can view at any moment. Okay, so we wish to sign off and hope to meet you all in the next program. Keep supporting us as always, dear participants, and do not forget to click on the big fat flag button and subscribe our YouTube channel, Dr.MGR University Phase II Digital Learning, for further updates about our programs and videos. The outbreak of this deadly pandemic requires all of us to stay safe and healthy. Let's follow and overcome this together. Thank you and bye. Till we meet again.
பாதையில் செல்லுவோம்
Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, University, Madurai, Chennai. Dr.MGR Educational and Research Institute, University, Madurai, Chennai.